Right now in Sudan, anarchist comrades are organizing in the middle of a war, repression, and displacement. The anarchist group in Sudan is building mutual aid, grassroots committees, and political education for survival and liberation. And they need our support. You can stand with them by making a one-time donation, holding your own fundraiser and sending the funds to the Open Collective, Support Sudanese Comrades, link in bio, or become a monthly supporter at that same Open Collective link. Every contribution strengthens their ability to keep resisting and caring for their people. Solidarity means action. Tap the link in our bio or in the show notes and support the anarchist group in Sudan today.
Hello, and welcome to a special episode of The Dugout about Zolo Agona Azania. Zolo is a former political prisoner, artist, and organizer who spent more than 35 years in prison and was released in 2017. Since then, he's been living in Indiana and supporting other formerly incarcerated people while trying to secure stable housing for himself. We wanted to highlight his story before we have him on for an interview so that folks can support him. We'll have his Patreon and his Cahshapp links in the show notes, and we wanted to urge everyone to drop 5, 10, 15 a month, anything that they can do to support our former political prisoners and Black revolutionaries. The material for this episode comes from an interview originally aired on the Final Straw Radio. It was later published as a zine. What follows is not a comprehensive biography, but just a guided listening through parts of Zolo's life as he tells it, and the conditions that shaped it. So, here we'll go. Zolo was born in rural Missouri near the Mississippi River. He spent much of his childhood on a farm in a small town that was affected by flooding and limited access to schooling. When he was very young, his family moved to Gary, Indiana as part of the larger migration of Black families moving from rural areas to industrial cities. Zolo describes his childhood as generally happy. He spent time outdoors and was especially drawn to animals. After moving to the city, that connection stayed with him. He talks about bringing home stray dogs, reptiles, and other animals and not feeling scared or afraid of them. School was initially a place where he felt capable. This changed after his father died. Zolo was 9 years old. He just lost interest in some subjects, though he continued to be drawn to English, math, and especially art. As a teenager, Zolo spent more time outside of formal structures. He ran the streets, built go-karts, and followed the older boys in town around. Pressured into helping steal dogs from a garage. Because of his size, he was able to fit through a window that none of the others could. The group was eventually caught, and because Zolo was young and had no prior record, the judge placed him on probation rather than sending him away. Zolo later explained that he did not fully understand the terms of probation at the time. But when he turned 18, he was charged with a felony home invasion, and he spent 16 months in county jail while awaiting trial. Facing the possibility of a life sentence, he pled guilty and was sent to prison in 1974 when he was 19 years old. While incarcerated, Zolo began to focus seriously on his art, connecting with other imprisoned artists who encouraged him to develop his skills, particularly in surreal and abstract styles. He describes learning to layer images in ways that reflected internal experiences rather than realism. At the same time, he became involved in political study. Inside the prison, he engaged in organized political education, including members of the Black Panther Party who had been imprisoned. Zolo wasn't a member of the party, but a student of the people who were, and through them, he studied political theory, dialectics, history, and self-discipline. He describes this period as a re-education, one that changed how he understood himself and the world. Access to political material while incarcerated was restricted, and books were often labeled as threats to prison security. Still, people found ways to read and study together, and Zolo describes this culture where learning was valued and shared and where people encouraged each other to absorb as much knowledge as possible, to be a sponge. After his release in 1980, Zolo attempted to apply what he had learned by organizing and engaging politically in his community. Several years later, he was arrested again, this time accused of a bank robbery and the murder of a police officer in Gary, Indiana. Zolo was never identified by a witness, and the case against him relied on circumstantial evidence. What became central to the prosecution, however, was his political identity. Zolo openly identified as a citizen of the Republic of New Africa, a movement advocating self-determination for Black people in the southeastern United States. Once this affiliation became public, Zolo was portrayed as a political extremist, and media coverage intensified. He was framed as a central figure in the case. He was sentenced to death and spent more than 27 years on death row. During this time, he continued to study law and eventually became a jailhouse lawyer, assisting himself and others in navigating the legal system. He describes learning the law not as a formal education, but as a necessity. Zolo was eventually released in 2017 after more than 3 decades in prison. Returning to the outside world came with its own challenges. He's spoken about housing instabilities, difficulties accessing financial assistance, including COVID relief funds. But despite this, he's remained active in supporting other formerly incarcerated people and continues to share legal knowledge, organizational strategy, and produce art. Zolo's life reflects on the long-term effects of incarceration, political repression, and survival under sustained pressure. His story is not singular, but is specific and shaped by place, time, and the choices made by institutions as much as by individuals. Listening to Zolo means listening across decades, through childhood, imprisonment, study, and return. It's a reminder of how much knowledge, creativity, and labor exists inside of all of us, and the prisons can't take that away from us, no matter how much they want us to be unseen. Just to share a bit more about what Zolo is going through now, on June 5th, 2025, they were fired after being in a minor accident and didn't cause any serious damage, thankfully, so they filed a grievance against their employer for violations of procedural due process violations. They lost the grievance, and the Teamsters Local 710 did not support them on it at all, so they filed an insurance claim while they looked for employment elsewhere. They were awarded unemployment benefits, but the company did not put forth any challenge or opposition to the original insurance claim until he filed a civil rights complaint around August 2025. So they pulled some strings and requested that the Illinois Department of Employment Security to, quote, reconsider its decision 2 months after they'd been receiving assistance. Now they have nothing coming in except for some Social Security. Now they can't cover any of their other bills. The multi-billion-dollar employer, Remprex, and their multi-million-dollar retained law offices have strategically and in bad faith utilized its vast resources in this substantive procedural due process, breach of contract, retaliation case through attrition, maliciously inflicting continuous losses of time, material, and morale and personal capacity, thereby forcing Zolo to repeatedly fight the same court battles for full disclosure of evidence, demonstrating a pattern and practice of discovery abuse designated to obstruct justice and undermine the fair administration of this process. It's not about justice or fairness, it's about manipulations of proceeding, control of the narrative, in spite of the facts that are in favor of Zolo. And we are urging folks to support them through this hard time and to not forget our elders. Remember to constantly tell each other stories when we need the support to extend our solidarity. Hopefully, by next month, we'll have a more long-form interview with Zolo. But until then, stay safe, stay dangerous. Happy Black History Month.